I just want to check my balance. The words hung in the air like a challenge nobody saw coming. The dirty boy stood there in his torn sneakers and oil-stained jacket, and for a split second, everyone in that pristine bank lobby froze. Then Gordon Vance laughed. It started as a chuckle, then grew into that booming, theatrical laugh of a man who thought he owned the world. "What do you want, kid, a handout?" The boy did not flinch. His voice stayed steady, quiet but clear. "No, sir, I just want to check my balance." He pulled out a crumpled piece of paper from his jacket and held it forward with both hands. Gordon's eyes lit up with opportunity. This was too perfect. He snatched the paper, turned to face the crowd of wealthy investors and journalists packed into the lobby, and announced loud enough for everyone to hear that he was going to put this kid's balance up on the main screen. Let everyone see what financial empire this little tycoon had built. The investors laughed. The camera zoomed in. Gordon connected his laptop to the massive display behind him, typed in the numbers from that dirty paper with exaggerated flourish, and hovered his finger over the Enter key like a game show host about to reveal a prize. Then he pressed it. What Gordon thought was an innocent request from a kid with nothing was about to end his dream and become the beginning of his worst nightmare.
The fluorescent lights of Platinum Trust Bank glinted off polished surfaces as Gordon Vance stood at the center of the main lobby, his perfectly tailored Italian suit catching the afternoon sun, streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows. The teleprompter reflected in his eyes as he addressed the camera crew. Investors and financial journalists gathered for what was supposed to be his crowning moment. Gordon had called this press conference himself, eager to announce record quarterly profits and cement his reputation as the most ruthless banker on Wall Street. His voice boomed with confidence as he gestured toward the massive digital screen behind him, displaying charts of soaring stock prices and revenue projections. This was his kingdom, his monument to success, and everyone in that lobby was about to witness his absolute dominance in the financial world. The space buzzed with energy, expensive cologne mixing with the scent of fresh coffee from the lobby cafe, the low hum of conversation punctuated by the clicking of designer heels against the floor. Camera operators adjusted their equipment, while sound technicians checked levels. This was the kind of event that made careers, the kind of announcement that would be quoted in financial newspapers for weeks. Gordon had spent 3 decades climbing to this position. He started as a junior analyst, worked 80-hour weeks, stepped on anyone who got in his way, and built a reputation as someone who always delivered results, no matter what it took. Platinum Trust Bank had been struggling when he took over as CEO 7 years ago, bleeding money and losing clients to more aggressive competitors. Gordon changed everything. He slashed expenses, fired entire departments, restructured the investment portfolio, and within 18 months had turned the bank into one of the most profitable institutions on the East Coast. Wall Street loved him. Shareholders worshipped him.
He appeared on magazine covers and financial talk shows, always ready with a sharp quote about winners and losers, about the harsh reality of capitalism, about how success belonged to those willing to make the hard decisions that softer men avoided. He became known for his press conferences, these carefully staged events where he would stand in the lobby surrounded by wealth and power and announce another quarter of unprecedented growth. Today was supposed to be his masterpiece. The numbers were staggering even by his standards. 42% profit increase, stock prices up 67% year over year, executive bonuses reaching levels that would make headlines. He had prepared his speech carefully, every word calculated for maximum impact. The 50 investors gathered in the lobby represented over $3 billion in assets under management. These were not casual observers. These were the whales, the power players, the kind of clients who could make or break a financial institution with a single phone call. Gordon knew how to play to them. Give them confidence, give them spectacle, give them a show that reinforced their belief that they had chosen the right bank, the right leader, the winning team. He was halfway through his prepared remarks when the doors opened and the boy walked in. The kid looked like he had been living under a bridge. His sneakers were held together with duct tape. His jeans were 3 sizes too big and stained with what looked like motor oil, and his oversized jacket had more holes than fabric. Dirt smudged his cheeks, and his hair stuck up in greasy clumps. He could not have been more than 12 years old. 2 security guards immediately moved toward him, their hands already reaching for his thin shoulders, but Gordon raised one manicured hand to stop them. A slow smile spread across his face, the kind of smile a predator gives when it spots wounded prey. This was too perfect.
Here he was, surrounded by cameras, broadcasting live to financial networks, with 50 of the wealthiest investors in the country watching, and this street urchin had just handed him comedy gold. Gordon could already imagine the clips going viral, the memes, the late-night talk show hosts playing the footage of him putting this kid in his place. It would be brilliant marketing, a demonstration of the natural order of things, a reminder that Platinum Trust Bank served only the elite. Gordon stepped away from the podium and approached the boy, his leather shoes clicking against the floor with each deliberate step. The journalists swiveled their cameras to capture the moment. Perfect. Gordon spread his arms wide in mock welcome, his voice dripping with theatrical generosity. So what do we have here? Ladies and gentlemen, it appears we have an unexpected visitor. Tell me, young man, are you lost? Should we call someone to come get you? The investors chuckled, a ripple of cruel laughter that echoed through the space. Gordon was performing now, feeding off their amusement like a comedian working a crowd. He loved this feeling, the power of holding an audience in the palm of his hand, the validation that came from making important people laugh at his jokes. But the boy did not flinch. He stood there, small and filthy in the middle of all that wealth and polish and success, and when he spoke, his voice was quiet but steady. No, sir, I am not lost. I just want to check my balance. The laughter erupted in the lobby. Gordon clutched his chest in exaggerated shock, stumbling backward as if the words had physically struck him. Your balance. Oh, this is rich. Did everyone hear that? This kid wants to check his balance. The journalists were eating it up, microphones extended, camera zooming in on the boy's dirt-streaked face. Gordon turned back to his audience of investors, his arms spread wide. Tell you what, kid.
Since you have interrupted my very important press conference, I will make you a deal. I will personally check your balance for you, right here, right now. In fact, let us put it up on the big screen so everyone can see exactly how much financial power you are wielding. He gestured grandly toward the massive display behind him, the one that had been showing profit margins and stock tickers just moments before. We will make this a teaching moment. Show all these good people what happens when you work hard and make smart investments. Or in your case, what happens when you do not. More laughter. Gordon was on fire. This was exactly the kind of moment that separated good CEOs from legendary ones. The ability to think on your feet, to turn an interruption into entertainment, to demonstrate absolute confidence even when confronted with the unexpected. He snapped his fingers at his assistant, who hurried over with his laptop. Within seconds, the computer was connected to the projection system, and Gordon's personal access to Platinum Trust's master database appeared on the screen, crystal clear for everyone to see. This was the nuclear option, the system that gave him access to every account in the bank's network, including the ones that operated in the shadows of normal banking oversight. But Gordon was too caught up in the performance to consider the risks. He was untouchable. He was a financial god, and he was about to humiliate this kid so thoroughly that the video would trend for weeks. All right then, kid, let us see this fortune of yours. What is your account number? The boy reached into his jacket pocket with a trembling hand. For the first time, he looked scared, and Gordon felt a surge of satisfaction. Good. Let the kid squirm. Let him realize what a mistake he had made coming in here. The boy pulled out a crumpled piece of paper, the edges torn and stained, and extended it toward Gordon with both hands.
The gesture was oddly formal, almost ceremonial, as if the paper contained something sacred. Gordon snatched it with 2 fingers, holding it away from his body as if it might be contaminated. He unfolded it with exaggerated disgust, shaking his head for the cameras. Jesus Christ, kid, did you fish this out of a storm drain? The paper was covered in smudged numbers written in pencil, barely legible. Gordon squinted at it, then held it up to the light. 18 digits. That was unusual. Most account numbers were 12, maybe 14 at most. But Gordon was too far into the performance to stop now. This was his moment, his spotlight, his chance to demonstrate to everyone watching that he was not just a banker, but an entertainer, a personality, someone who could command a room. He turned to the massive screen and began typing the numbers into the search field, reading them aloud as he went. 8, 7, 4, 9, 2. Let us see what kind of empire you have built here, kid. Each keystroke felt significant, theatrical. He was drawing this out, milking every second of anticipation. The investors were leaning forward in their seats. The journalists had their recording lights on. Even the security guards were watching now, smiles on their faces as they waited for the punchline. Gordon loved it. This was what power felt like. Not just having money, but having an audience. Not just making decisions, but making them publicly, dramatically, with flair. His entire career had been built on this principle. It was not enough to win. You had to win spectacularly, in front of witnesses, in a way that people would remember and talk about and share on social media.
The boy's voice cut through the laughter, quiet but insistent. My dad said that money was safe here, before you fired him, before he died. Gordon did not even look at him. He was focused on the screen, on the performance, on the final humiliating reveal that would cap off this perfect moment. Kids said weird things all the time, dramatic things, trying to get sympathy or attention. It did not matter. In 30 seconds, this would all be over. The kid would shuffle back out to whatever gutter he had crawled from, and Gordon would return to his press conference with a viral moment that would boost the bank's profile for months. He typed the last digit with a flourish and hovered his finger over the enter key. Drum roll, please. Let us see the grand total of this young tycoon's fortune. I'm guessing, maybe $10? 20 if we are being generous? He smashed the enter key with theatrical force, then spun toward his audience with his arms spread wide, waiting for the laughter, waiting for the applause, waiting for the validation of his superiority. The laughter stopped. Not gradually, but all at once, like someone had flipped a switch. Gordon felt the change before he understood it, a sudden shift in the energy of the room that made his smile falter. He turned back toward the screen, and the smile died completely. The display had resolved, showing information in crisp, undeniable detail. The font was huge, impossible to miss, displayed for every camera and every investor and every journalist in that lobby to see. Account holder, Platinum Employee Pension Fund. Beneficiary, Gordon Vance. Offshore routing, Cayman Islands Central Bank. Current balance, $45 million. The silence in the lobby was absolute. Gordon felt his knees go weak.
His vision tunneled, everything around him fading, except that screen, those words, those numbers that should not exist in the main database, that should have been buried behind layers of encryption and offshore firewalls, that should have been invisible to everyone except him and his partners in the Cayman Islands. He spun back toward the laptop, his hands already reaching to close it, to shut it down, to make it disappear. But his fingers were shaking so badly that he knocked the mouse off the table. It clattered to the floor, the sound impossibly loud in the sudden quiet. This is a system error, Gordon stammered, his voice cracking. The confidence, the theatrical boom, all of it was gone. He sounded like a different person, small and desperate. His face had gone from tanned and confident to pale and sweaty in seconds. This is a glitch in the database. Someone hacked my login. This is not real. But even as he said it, he knew how ridiculous it sounded. Everyone in that lobby knew it was real.
You could see it in their faces, the way the investors had gone rigid in their seats, the way the journalists were barking into their microphones, the way his own assistant had taken 3 steps backward and was staring at him like he had transformed into something monstrous. The investors were already pulling out their phones, their faces tight with fury and calculation. They were not calling the police. They were calling their lawyers, their accountants, their advisors, trying to figure out how much of their own money had been contaminated by association with him. The journalists were calling their networks, their producers, their editors, already crafting headlines in their heads. The camera operators were checking their footage, making sure every second had been captured in high definition. And the boy, that filthy, quiet 12-year-old boy, was staring at Gordon with eyes that suddenly looked much older than they should.
The kid took a step forward, and when he spoke, his voice carried across the entire lobby, clear and steady and utterly devastating. That is not a glitch, Mr. Vance. That is the retirement money you stole from my dad and 500 other families. You told everyone the pension fund collapsed. You said there was nothing left. You made people believe they lost everything because of bad investments. But it was all here, in your account, the whole time.
Gordon felt the world tilting beneath him. He recognized the account number now, recognized it with the sick clarity of someone watching their entire life collapse in real time. That number was not supposed to exist in the main database. It was a ghost account, a carefully constructed shell that should have been invisible to anyone except him and his offshore partners. He had used it to siphon pension contributions for years, a little at a time, always careful, always covered by falsified reports and cooked books. The employees had trusted him with their futures, their retirements, their security. And he had taken it all, hidden it behind layers of offshore corporations and shell companies, convinced that he was too smart to ever be caught. The system had been perfect. The offshore banks asked no questions. The shell companies left no paper trail. The falsified pension reports showed a fund slowly declining due to market conditions, nothing suspicious, nothing that would trigger audits or investigations. But somehow this kid had the number. Somehow this kid knew exactly which account to access. And somehow, impossibly, Gordon had just exposed his entire criminal operation, live on camera in front of 50 investors, 20 journalists, and at least 4 live television feeds. The boy was still talking, his voice growing stronger with each word. You fired my dad when he started asking questions about the pension fund. He was the senior accountant. He saw the discrepancies in the quarterly reports.
He tried to report it to the board, but you got to them first. You told him he was unreliable, that he was making up conspiracy theories, that he was having personal problems affecting his judgment. You destroyed his reputation. And when he could not find another job, when the stress got too much, when his heart gave out from the pressure and the shame, you sent my mom a sympathy card. It is still on our refrigerator. The words are printed in gold script, with deepest condolences. Gordon wanted to run, wanted to disappear, wanted to wake up from this nightmare, but his legs would not move. He was frozen there, trapped in the spotlight he had created for himself, surrounded by witnesses and cameras, and the smoking gun of his own greed displayed in letters 3 feet tall behind him. One of the investors stood up, his face purple with rage. I have $18 million in pension liabilities with you, Vance. $18 million that I trusted you to manage on behalf of my employees. If this is what you do with pension funds, what the hell have you done with our money? Others were standing now, shouting, their voices overlapping in a cacophony of anger and accusation. Someone was yelling about fiduciary duty. Someone else was demanding to see their account immediately. A woman in a designer suit was on her phone with what sounded like the Securities and Exchange Commission. Gordon tried to speak, tried to explain, tried to spin some story that might salvage even a fraction of his crumbling empire. But nothing came out except a strangled wheeze. His mouth moved, but no words formed. The reality of what he had just done was crushing him like a physical weight. He had spent years building this scheme, years covering his tracks, years being so careful that not even the most thorough audit could touch him. And then he had destroyed it all in less than 5 minutes because he wanted to humiliate a child on camera. The irony was so brutal it almost made him laugh.
Almost. Then he heard the sirens. They were distant at first, just background noise in the chaos of the lobby, but they were getting louder. Multiple vehicles, coming fast, converging on the bank from different directions. Gordon's assistant had disappeared completely. The security guards were not moving to help him. They were standing back, watching with a detached interest of people witnessing a building collapse. One of them was filming on his phone. The glass doors burst open and federal agents flooded into the lobby, their badges held high, their presence commanding immediate attention. An older woman in a dark suit strode through the crowd with the confidence of someone who had been waiting for this exact moment. She held up her FBI credentials, and the entire room went silent again. "Gordon Vance, you are under arrest for wire fraud, embezzlement, money laundering, and theft of pension assets." Her voice carried across the lobby with absolute authority. 2 agents moved in with handcuffs, and Gordon instinctively pulled away, his brain still trying to find some escape route, some explanation, some way out of this impossible situation. "Do you know who I am?" The words came out desperate and shrill. "Do you have any idea what kind of lawyers I can afford? I am worth more than everyone in this room combined. You cannot touch me." The FBI agent did not even blink. "Actually, Mr. Vance, according to the account you just displayed on that screen for all these witnesses and cameras, you are worth about $45 million, which is exactly the amount stolen from the Platinum Employee Pension Fund between 2014 and 2024. So yes, I know exactly who you are. You are a thief, and you are under arrest." The handcuffs clicked shut around Gordon's wrists, and the sound echoed in his head like a prison door slamming. The cameras were still rolling, still capturing every humiliating second. He could see the investors on their phones, their faces twisted with rage and panic. He could see the journalists typing frantically on their laptops and tablets. He could see his entire empire crumbling in real time on the stock ticker display that was still running on a side monitor. Platinum Trust shares were in free fall, down 20%, 30%, 40%. His phone in his jacket pocket buzzed nonstop with calls and messages he would never answer. Everything was gone. The money, the power, the reputation, the carefully constructed image of the untouchable financial genius. All of it destroyed because he could not resist the opportunity to mock a 12-year-old kid in front of an audience. "Wait!" Gordon twisted to look at the boy as the agents began pulling him toward the doors. "Who are you? How did you get that number?" The boy did not answer, but the FBI agent did, pausing just long enough to glance back at the massive screen still displaying Gordon's offshore account information. "The kid's mother is Sarah Chen. She works as a forensic accountant for the Securities and Exchange Commission. When her husband died, she started her own investigation into what really happened to that pension fund. Took her almost 3 years to trace the money through all your shell companies and offshore routing. She found that account number 6 months ago." The agent's smile was cold and satisfied. "But we needed proof. We needed you to access it yourself to establish the digital connection between you and the stolen funds. We needed your fingerprints all over it, metaphorically speaking. So we waited. And when we heard you were doing a live press conference today, Sarah had an idea. She gave her son that account number and told him exactly what to say. She said you would not be able to resist the opportunity to humiliate a poor kid on camera. Looks like she was right." Gordon's legs gave out. The agents caught him, holding him upright as they dragged him toward the doors. Outside, news vans were already setting up, satellite dishes extending toward the sky. Reporters were doing stand-ups with the bank visible behind them. The stock ticker showed Platinum Trust Bank shares had dropped 53%. His phone was still buzzing.
The boy, Leo Chen, was shaking hands with one of the FBI agents, and for the first time since walking into that lobby, he was smiling. Behind him, the massive screen still displayed the evidence of Gordon's crimes in letters so large they could probably be read from the street. The last thing Gordon saw before the agents pushed him into the back of a waiting vehicle was his own face frozen on that screen, captured in the moment just before he pressed enter, still smiling, still confident, still completely certain of his own invincibility. If you are watching this on Money Stories That Matter, hit that subscribe button right now because we bring you stories where arrogance meets consequence and karma is always watching. Do not miss what happens next. The vehicle pulled away from Platinum Trust Bank with swaying. Gordon sat in the back seat, handcuffed, watching through tinted windows as his former kingdom receded into the distance. Everything he had spent 30 years building was gone, not just damaged or wounded, but completely obliterated. And it had taken less time to destroy than it took to eat lunch. The Federal Detention Center was nothing like the luxury Gordon was accustomed to. Cold concrete, fluorescent lights that hummed constantly, the smell of industrial cleaner mixed with despair. They processed him like any other criminal. Fingerprints, mugshot, strip search, orange jumpsuit. The guards did not care that he used to be a billionaire.
They did not care that he had been on magazine covers. One of them recognized him from the viral video and smirked, but said nothing. Gordon's lawyers arrived within hours, an entire team of them, the best that money could buy, or at least the best that the money he still had access to could buy, which was rapidly approaching zero as his accounts were frozen one by one. They sat across from him in a small gray room and laid out the situation in terms so bleak that Gordon wanted to vomit. The evidence was overwhelming. He had accessed the account himself. He had displayed it publicly. He had established the digital connection between himself and the stolen funds in front of dozens of witnesses and multiple cameras. There was no defense for that, no technicality that would save him, no reasonable doubt to exploit. The lawyers could maybe negotiate a plea deal, try to get the sentence down from life to something merely horrific, but they all knew how this was going to end. Gordon Vance was going to prison for a very long time. The media coverage was relentless. The video of his arrest had been viewed over 200 million times within the first week. Every news outlet ran the story. Financial experts appeared on talk shows to dissect what had happened. Legal analysts called it one of the most spectacular white-collar crime busts in history. The fact that he had essentially arrested himself, that his own arrogance had been the weapon used to destroy him, made it irresistible to audiences around the world. People loved it. They loved watching a rich, powerful man brought down by his own cruelty. They loved the poetic justice of it. They loved that a 12-year-old kid and his mother had outsmarted one of Wall Street's most ruthless operators. The story had everything. David versus Goliath. Justice for the little guy. A villain so perfectly hateable that you could not script it better.
The investors who had laughed along with Gordon's cruel joke found themselves under investigation as well. Had they known about the pension fraud? Had they benefited from it? Were they complicit? Several of them hired their own lawyers. 2 of them fled the country. The Securities and Exchange Commission opened investigations into everyone who had significant dealings with Platinum Trust Bank. It was a bloodbath. Within a month, Platinum Trust Bank filed for bankruptcy. The institution that Gordon had built into a powerhouse, that he had been so proud of, ceased to exist. The building was sold. The employees scattered to other jobs. The brand became toxic, a cautionary tale, a punchline. But the pension fund was recovered. Every single dollar that Gordon had stolen was traced, seized, and returned. The offshore accounts were frozen and liquidated. The shell companies were dismantled. It took months of painstaking work by forensic accountants and federal investigators, but they got it all back. 500 families received the retirement security they had been promised, the security that Gordon had stolen from them. Sarah Chen, the boy's mother,
was promoted to lead investigator at the Securities and Exchange Commission. Her work on the case became a textbook example of patient, methodical financial detective work. She gave interviews about the investigation, always careful to give credit to her late husband, David Chen, who had first discovered the discrepancies and paid for that discovery with his career and ultimately his life. She kept the sympathy card that Gordon had sent after David died. She framed it and hung it in her office as a reminder, not of grief, but of justice. Below it, she placed a photo from that day at the bank, the moment captured by the news cameras, showing Leo standing calm while Gordon was led away in handcuffs.
Leo Chen handled his sudden fame with the same quiet composure he had shown in that lobby. Schools invited him to speak. News programs wanted interviews. He did some of them, always deflecting credit to his mother, always remembering his father. When reporters asked what he was thinking when he walked into that bank, Leo's answer was simple and devastating. I was thinking about my dad, about how Mr. Vance made him feel worthless, about how he died believing he had failed us. I wanted Mr. Vance to know that my dad was right, that the truth mattered, that stealing from people has consequences, and I wanted him to prove it himself. I just had to get him to press enter. The trial took 8 months to prepare. Gordon's lawyers tried everything. They claimed entrapment, argued that the account access had been obtained under false pretenses, insisted that using a child as part of an investigation was unethical and illegal. None of it worked. The evidence was simply too overwhelming. Gordon had accessed the account voluntarily. He had displayed it publicly. He had literally projected his own crimes on a screen 40 feet tall for the world to see. There was no defense against that level of self-inflicted destruction. The prosecution did not even have to work that hard. They just played the video, over and over. Gordon typing in the numbers, Gordon pressing enter, Gordon's face going white as the truth appeared on that massive screen. It was the most damning evidence imaginable, and Gordon had created it himself. The judge showed no mercy. Gordon Vance was sentenced to 35 years in federal prison with no possibility of parole for at least 20 years. Every asset he owned was seized. The penthouse apartment, the vacation homes, the cars, the art collection, the offshore accounts, everything. The government liquidated it all to pay restitution to the victims and cover the costs of the investigation. By the time they finished, Gordon had nothing.
Less than nothing, because he still owed millions in fines that he would never be able to pay. In prison, Gordon had plenty of time to think. Too much time. He replayed that moment in the lobby constantly, searching for the point where he could have stopped, where he could have seen the trap, where his arrogance had overridden his survival instinct. But there was no such point. From the moment Leo walked through those doors, Gordon had been doomed. Not because of bad luck, but because he was exactly who he had always been. A man who valued performance over caution. A man who needed an audience for his cruelty. A man who believed his wealth and power made him untouchable. The other inmates learned quickly who Gordon Vance was. The coverage had been too extensive for anyone to miss. In a place where many people had lost pensions, lost savings, lost their family's security to corporate greed and white-collar crime, Gordon was not popular. He requested protective custody after 3 weeks and spent the rest of his time in isolation, alone with his thoughts, alone with his regrets, alone with the endless mental replay of himself pressing that enter key and destroying everything he had ever built. Meanwhile, Leo Chen finished high school with honors and earned a full scholarship to study finance at Columbia University. He worked summer internships at the SEC alongside his mother, learning the craft of financial investigation, carrying on his father's legacy in a way that would have made David Chen incredibly proud. The legacy of Gordon Vance's downfall extended far beyond one man's prison sentence. The case sparked a wave of pension fund audits across the entire financial industry. Regulatory agencies implemented new oversight requirements. Whistleblower protections were strengthened. Congress held hearings.
The Platinum Trust scandal became required reading in business schools, a case study about the dangers of unchecked power and the absolute necessity of ethical leadership. But perhaps the most lasting impact was cultural. The video became a reference point, a moment that people pointed to when discussing accountability and justice. When someone asked what happens when arrogance meets consequence, the answer was simple. Watch what happened to Gordon Vance. Watch him smile and type and press enter. Watch him destroy himself in real time because he could not imagine a world where he was not the smartest person in the room. Years later, people still talked about it. The banker who arrested himself, the kid who brought down a billionaire with a piece of paper, the mother who spent 3 years hunting justice for her husband and 500 families. It became legend, the kind of story that people told each other to restore their faith that sometimes, just sometimes, the system actually worked, that sometimes the powerful did face consequences, that sometimes karma was not just a comforting myth, but a real force that found its target. Gordon Vance had believed money could buy anything, that power meant immunity, that rules applied to everyone except him. In the end, all it took to prove him wrong was a 12-year-old boy, a crumpled piece of paper, and 17 seconds of typing. 17 seconds to expose $45 million in stolen pensions. 17 seconds to end a career. 17 seconds to prove that the greatest weakness of the powerful is their absolute certainty that they can never fall.
So, here is my question for you. Could you have kept your composure like Leo did? Could you have walked into that bank knowing what was about to happen, knowing that one wrong word or one nervous gesture might ruin everything? Leave a comment below and let us know what you would have done in his position. And if this story resonated with you, if you believe that arrogance should always meet consequence, then share this video with someone who needs to be reminded that karma is patient, but it always collects. This is Money Stories That Matter, where every number tells a story, every decision has a price, and justice sometimes comes from the most unexpected places. Make sure you are subscribed because we've got more stories like this one. Stories where the ending is not always what you expect, but it is always what was deserved. Until next time, remember that when someone asks you to check their balance, maybe pause for a second and consider whether they are asking for charity or offering you a chance to expose yourself. Gordon Vance never considered that possibility, and it cost him everything.